So been a dad 20 years, got two incredible daughters. Love your daughters. In fact, our youngest daughter and your oldest daughter were were fast friends when they were little tiny people, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that became a funny thing because our little Emma was actually as tall, or maybe even a little taller than your Olivia, and now your Olivia is 5'11", and what what I would want people to know at this point is that she's an incredible athlete. She's an incredible young lady, and she's at Kennesaw State. She's playing D1 volleyball. She was freshman of the year, right?
He
Was
was
she
on the all freshman team.
all freshman team? Okay,
She finished second in the freshman of the year thing.
and which is saying something, especially for
Yeah.
somebody. But anyhow, I mean, she's kind of a freak in nature as far as she's got a 36-inch vertical jump. She uh, she you said the other day she's hitting 11 foot with her vertical. That's just crazy. That's crazy for a guy. So, and she's 5'11". How many 5'11" guys do you know that can hit 11 feet? Not very
Right.
many. So,
Right.
um, here she is, and you would have seen this from, I mean, you would have seen some of this development coming on at
Hmm.
a younger age, but
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
did you first start to think that she had some sort of, physical ability like this?
Yeah. I think it was probably when she was in the tail end of elementary school, heading into middle school.
Okay.
At the time, she's doing volleyball, but we didn't start her out doing volleyball. We started her out doing track, her and her
Of
sister.
course she did.
Hmm. And so, the local rec track team that they
Yeah.
participated in, and her first year running, she did not care one bit about being, you know, an athlete on the track. But she would just go out there. And we'd just be like, okay, just run from here to here. Like, you got to do a whole half a lap, or you got to do whatever.
Yeah.
And she would just do it. And you could just see, like, it was so easy for her. And she didn't even really try. Like, we would try to get her to run harder, like run faster. And I don't even think she knew how to run faster. It was kind of like, I'm just out here floating along. But she was still doing really well, just not even knowing what she was doing. And that was when we were like, huh, she's got something. And
And
so we
she's
put
how
her
old
in.
at that point?
She's like maybe 12, maybe
Okay.
12.
So she hadn't really been in organized sports up to that point. I mean, obviously been around a father that's an athlete and athletic and in that
Yeah,
whole realm,
yeah,
but
yeah.
she wasn't like hanging out and playing basketball or volleyball or anything like that on any organized level.
Nope, not at all. And
That
she
goes
wasn't
against the
really,
grain, doesn't it? I mean,
she wasn't even interested either. She probably would have never played sports if we hadn't got her involved in it. And so yeah, so she did that her first year. Then we said, you know what? And then so at that point, we transitioned to the middle school at Jefferson. We said, so let's go ahead and put her in the middle school, on the middle school team. So she was on the middle school team. Her sister was on the middle school team. Her sister was in the sixth grade. She was in the eighth grade at this time.
okay.
And
So
and
this is her first time to be in that kind of organized sport.
yeah,
Okay, and
exactly.
it's track at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she tried maybe a little bit harder in middle school, maybe a little harder, and she was like second fastest girl on her team. She made it to states, like that kind of thing. And she didn't even want to be there. Like she didn't even want to go to states. We were like, well, you got to go to states, okay? Like, you know. So she finished like at the top 8 at states,
That's crazy.
as a sprinter. I think it was the 100 and 200. And we were just like, okay, and at that same year, we put her on the volleyball team as well, the
Okay.
middle school. She tried out. She didn't know what she was doing, but I think the coaches could see that she was tall. and that she could jump a little bit. You know, they were like, okay, I think we can work with this, even though she didn't have a position, but they did put her as a middle blocker on that team. So that was her
Okay.
first experience with volleyball.
Now
Um,
you had coached some volleyball,
I
right?
coached volleyball when I was in Pennsylvania. Before we came to Georgia, I coached 5 years of women's volleyball. Yeah.
Okay, so you could help her some with that. Did she receive that well?
Um, Not really. Like I said, she wasn't, I wasn't gonna take time with her after, like between, during summers or during fall or whatever. Like when they had time off from volleyball, she did not want to hear about volleyball. She didn't want to touch it. So I just left her alone,
Yeah. Uh,
pretty
That's
much. Pretty
got to know
much.
your
I left her
girl.
alone. Yeah, I left her alone. The only thing I was interested in was her coming back, like for the next season, when
Okay.
it was time. That was really, so I didn't want to get her to the point where she didn't want to come back to play the next year.
Okay, so now she transitions into high school, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, when was it that she got a little bug? She said, "Oh, I kind of like this." But not only when was that, but when did you start to see, hmm, maybe there's something more here than just,
Mhm.
participating in a high school sport?
Yeah, her freshman year, she played on the JV team.
Okay.
And during her JV season, you'd have um, and I think they still do this, where JV and varsity play at the same time, but on
Hmm.
two separate courts in the same gym. And it was during that time where she was really starting to play, like she was really starting to finally like understand the game a little bit.
Hmm.
Because I don't think she knew all the rules until her freshman year in high school. She started learning the rules. She started learning what middle blockers do, right?
Hmm.
So she started to kind of start to get that, and you could see it because she was like getting blocks, and then she was getting these attacks, and I think it was interesting because a colleague of mine, a good friend of mine from the university, his daughter played on the varsity team in the middle position, and my daughter was on the JV team in the middle. And he was basically like, yeah, my daughter just said that she can see that next year she's not going to be starting anymore, meaning that my daughter was like really doing well, and she could see that she was coming, so to speak.
Hmm.
And so that was the first time I was like, oh, okay, so maybe there is something here, and then so we put her in club volleyball that
After
winter.
her
After her
freshman year?
freshman season,
Okay.
yep, we put her in club ball.
And what was that like for you guys? Just kind of in a nutshell, what did that look like?
Yeah, so club ball is like, the time. It was basically like when your school season ends, you get maybe a few weeks and then you try out for club. So, and then club ball is like the travel team, right? And you go and you travel and you compete against other clubs of girls in different parts of the state or the region. I don't think
Okay.
we competed too much out of region, but mostly in the southeast region.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that would last for about how long?
about 6 months,
Oh,
five
wow.
months at very, yeah, 5 months I
And
would say
and
for sure.
if you don't mind me asking, I mean, what kind of
Yeah.
price tag went with that, or could go with that? What would be the
Depending on
range?
yeah, depending on the club, it could be anywhere from $1,800 for like maybe the younger kids to like 5,000 for the older, the high
For the
schoolers.
entire 6 months, you mean?
Yeah,
So
for
it
the
could be
entire
anywhere from
season.
like $300 a month to almost $1,000 a month.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
did that include travel as well,
It,
your
in-
travel
it
expense?
it did not include your travel expenses, and in some cases it didn't include your uniforms and things like that either. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So did she do club after her freshman year, after her sophomore year, and after her junior year as well? So you
Yeah.
did that for 3 years in a row. And
W-
and by
We
the time,
did. She did 4 years of club actually.
Okay.
So she did 2 years. She did freshman, yeah, basically after freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior season. Yeah.
Okay. So and she was developing along the way there, and you were seeing that. When was it that you thought, you know what, this girl might be able to, she might be able to
Yeah.
play collegiately?
Yeah. It was probably after her second season of club.
Okay,
She,
going
she's
into
been,
her junior year then.
well, actually, I think it was, let me see, freshman. It was after her sophomore, yeah, after her sophomore season, but
Okay.
not necessarily after her sophomore year. So she
Okay.
still
Okay.
had her after her sophomore, like high school season. Um, there was this, I think her athleticism was just starting to really blossom.
Yeah.
She was starting to really like come into her body because she was always tall and skinny,
Right.
but now she was starting to become more coordinated. You could see that she really had some athletic gifting, and it
Hmm.
was significant. And so after her sophomore season of club, her club coach was like, you know, there's some interest from, certain schools are looking at her. And we were like, really? Certain colleges, we were thinking like Division 1, like we were thinking like, Division 3 or, like
Yeah.
some small schools. And there were some small schools, but she was like, no, there's a couple of Division 1. And we were like, really? And so we were like, well, let's go talk to her high school coach and see what her high school coach thinks. And high school coach was like, yeah, I like, she was like, do we could definitely see her maybe in Division 2 or Division 3 program. And, they was telling us about all that. And so we were like, okay, so maybe we need to like start pressing in here. So we took her to a showcase. A showcase event is where they invite girls to come and just to do drills and skills and maybe play a little bit of volleyball.
Hmm.
And these are coaches from colleges. So these are coaches from some like Division 2, Division 3 college programs. So
Okay.
she went to this showcase, and I remember it because we drove her to South Carolina for this event. And and we get in there, it's a bunch of girls, and they just start having them doing drills and doing certain things. And of course, they did the vertical jump testing and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we just remember her, she just like killed it. Like she just was like, I didn't even know she had all this like in her, but she just killed it. And you could see the coaches were like, wow, like, you know what I mean? Like there, you could see it on their
Hmm.
face when she would do something. And we were like, wow. And then at the end, we talked to some coaches, and these were like Division 2 coaches mostly. And they were like, oh no, this girl, she can play Division 1. Like they were like, she can go Division 1,
Hmm.
just with her ability. And that was the first time where it's just like, okay, like she could be Division 1. And
Now,
so
did she want to play at that level at that point?
she didn't have any idea what
Yeah.
she didn't have any idea what she wanted to do. But I don't know that she had that as a vision. No.
Okay. And so you
It
keep
was.
putting her in the clubs, after, and she's progressing. And I can remember going and
Yeah,
watching her
yeah,
play, and
yeah,
Boom Boom Barrage. She could just not only could she get up, she could blast it.
yeah,
Um, and very coordinated for being that tall, especially footwork. She had very quick feet, and so I could see
yeah,
where that kind of thing would take place. But kind of fast forward to, so you get into junior year, senior year, and people at this point, coaches, are they reaching out to you? What's that look like?
yeah. That there was that this was right around COVID when COVID happened, and so COVID kind of delayed when coaches could reach out. So it
Okay.
kept kind of getting pushed back. It kept getting pushed back, pushed back. Then eventually they opened like the floodgates, so to speak, and this was like June, June of 2020. And at that point, any coaches that wanted to talk to players could talk to them, call them, email them, or and they couldn't make visits yet, but they could call or email. And it was at that point when we did not know like the extent of the interest for her, but it was significant. Just all kinds of schools, like from the very moment, when it's say midnight, like after midnight,
Hmm.
coaches can reach out. And it was like 12:04, like like through the middle of the night, she was getting emails. And then people were just wanting to schedule times to talk to her, Zoom calls, all that. And it just never stopped really for the next almost year. That's what it was
So
like.
how did you manage that? I mean, how did you
Well,
help her manage that? That'd
yeah,
be
sh-
overwhelming.
yeah, she couldn't manage it on her own. I mean, it was a lot. So we had to put together spreadsheets for all the schools, a lot of Division 1 schools, a lot of Division 2 schools, and we put a spreadsheet together. I had a little whiteboard. I put my whiteboard together. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, it's another school, another school. And so that's kind of how we started out. And then there was a lot of schools initially wanted to talk to her. They wanted to meet her virtually.
Hmm.
So I was in charge of scheduling those. I was in charge of making sure she got there. I was in charge of kind of helping her with like things that she wanted to, she could say, things that she probably shouldn't
Hmm.
say. So I was in a lot of ways, I was like her little coach.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then we also hired a firm, so to speak, to help as well. So they were facilitating some of the
So
communication also.
that would have been like a PR, not so much a PR, but kind of that. They put together her. Did they put together like her highlights, a highlight reel for her, or is that something that you did?
Yeah,
Those
they would
sorts of
put those
things.
together. Yeah, they would put
Okay.
together those videos.
And they would
It was
send it to schools for you?
yes,
Okay.
or schools could go and view her profile and see the videos there.
Okay.
And then I would also add some videos from her high school games, from her club games. I'd add additional video from
Okay.
some of the video services that her teams would subscribe to. I'd put those in there. And then I'd help her as far as like emailing coaches, just particularly the schools that we were maybe most interested in. I
Okay.
would send out the videos to them because you had to keep them updated. They always want to know how you're doing, how are you progressing, what's your game looking like, because they always felt like you could get better,
Yeah.
and so they wanted to see the progress and maybe see the ceiling for
So
for what she could be.
how much time did that take you on an average, like a week or a month? What would you say?
I would say it was probably initially it was maybe like 10 hours a week. But at some point, when we started narrowing things down a little bit and we started to get a feel for what schools we were really most interested in, then it was maybe like 5 hours a week. But that was just the time I was putting in.
Yeah.
She had to also do like the phone calls and the video calls and things like that. And some of those I was on, and some of those, a lot of them I wasn't on. I wasn't involved in.
Yeah.
So,
So
so
man, so and then you started just narrowing down the process. And
mhm, mhm.
how many, I mean, what was the goal there? Was it to get it down to like a dozen teams or five, dozen teams, a dozen schools, five schools? Did you help her to walk through? So what is it that you're really looking for in these programs? And that way you can
Yeah,
get
yeah,
rid of
yeah.
programs that didn't work for you.
Yeah, that was a lot. Well, that was a lot of the part of where I was like, because as a parent, what you want to do is, like you know your kid, right?
Hmm.
Like them better than these schools do. And sometimes there were schools that on the list, honestly, that I just was like, I don't know that she's ready for this at this moment, right? Because, she was a decent student in high school, but she really wasn't like, an academic, she wasn't so academically inclined where I felt like she could go and play like high level volleyball and also be challenged significantly academically at the same time. I
Hmm.
struggled with like how, I wanted her to get into a place where she could kind of scaffold up, as opposed to having to have these super high expectations like right off the bat. Because as I mentioned to you, she was not a gym rat. She wouldn't have been in sports if I hadn't put her in sports. And I think that she was totally content with just not having sports. But I think at some point she did start to really care about volleyball, which was good. But she wasn't, even then, she wasn't really like a gym rat. She did what she needed to do, right? And she was just had all this talent. So
Hmm.
that being said, I struggle with, do we press on with like a school like University of Texas, or do we press on like with the school because like it's like Arkansas, Texas, Georgia, Florida State, Miami, Marquette. Like there's a lot of like
Yeah,
big programs,
heavy hitters.
Ole Miss, and so we were like, for me, I was like, I'm not sure if that's gonna be best for her for right now. So I
So
think,
one
yeah,
of the things that because I know you, and because
yeah,
one of the things I want to make sure that anybody that watches this understands, you weren't what people might typically say, this dad who's living vicariously through his daughter. It wasn't a thing of you pushing because, gosh, you know what, you can do this and you'll make me
right,
proud.
right.
Uh,
No, 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 no.
it's never been that.
Right.
It's been a thing of where you said, you know what, I think she's gifted here. So
Yeah,
let's give her a chance to flourish.
yeah,
And if
yeah.
she obviously she didn't really flourish in track, and so you said, okay, well, let's try something else. Obviously, she's gifted
Hmm.
athletically, so
Yeah,
let's see if this is something that is the road she's supposed to travel for a while. Because you
yes,
know as well
yeah,
as I do, collegiate sports, it's not what it used to be. But not only that, it's it's not what people think either,
exactly,
and
exactly.
and it's a very different world. And so uh, I know that. Okay, Charles, what's going to happen here in a second, and we'll edit here, is the video is going to end for whatever reason. I think I only put 90 minutes on there.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's see if we can restart it. Recording. Maybe you can coach me. Okay, here we go.
Recording in progress. All right.
All right, so pick it up where we just left off. So,
Mm-hmm.
you haven't been that kind of father that's been. I mean, you've been incredibly supportive, and I think there were probably times that you did push, but it wasn't pushing because you wanted something. It's because you wanted something for her,
Mm-hmm.
and you saw things there for her.
Yep. Yep.
And so how
Yeah.
did you balance, especially knowing, where you came from as a man, you didn't have a father around until you had this pastor around, that kind of surrogate father for you for a time. So how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, I think for me, and obviously it was helpful to have her mom involved in this process also, because we
Yeah.
would talk regularly about just our kids and where we felt like, what we felt like the Lord was doing in their lives. Like, okay, well, what's God doing
Hmm.
in her? And we always knew our youngest daughter, she was going to be more like the academic, right, in the family. And we felt like Olivia,
She's taken over the younger one. She's
oh
just taken
yeah,
over, man.
absolutely. And we felt like Olivia was just like, she has a rare gift here. And, a good part of her development process was allowing her to see that, putting her in situations where she could see that for herself, right?
Mm.
And I think in her high school years was where, because she had, she would obviously be all region. And then her last 2 years of high school being a player of the year in her region. And then getting the all region team as far as the national, you know, JV, Junior Volleyball Coaches Association, like starting to get those accolades, being on the watch list. And she almost made All-American as well. And we felt like, she just missed that also. But just seeing all that, I think that was the stuff that really helped her to see, you know what I mean? To see
Hmm.
like I've got something here. And I think that's all we really wanted was for her to see it. If she accepted it and wanted to move forward in it, then that was great. But if she just was like, you know what, I'm done, I don't want this, then that was okay with us too. But at the same time, i- if your kid says to something I want to persist in, then as a parent, you're like, okay, because you can see more than they can see, and you understand more. So you kind of know what it's going to take, right, to get her there. And so I think that's what we spent, definitely her last 2 years of high school. It's like, okay, let's make sure you are in a good position to make that transition to that high level of volleyball that's going to be coming when you hit your freshman year in college.
Hmm.
So that's where some of the pushing went, and then also same thing with her recruiting process, making sure that she made her, made did her commitments right.
Hmm.
And if the coach was calling you from wherever, then we need to make sure that we get on that call and be professional, and you know what I mean, do the things you need to do. So
Yeah.
she did well. She did well through that process. She
So
did
now
well.
she's at Kennesaw State. I kind of
Yeah.
definitely want people to hear that process because I think that can be really helpful for folks to hear how you kind of walk through it. And obviously, there's a lot more detail that goes with that. You
Hmm.
and Cheryl you've got a wonderful relationship. That's so helpful for your kids to see and for them to know
Hmm.
that it's not just dad or it's not just mom, it's
Yeah.
both of them. They see this in you, they can affirm that, they can help to
Right.
clarify and provide opportunities. So I think that's great.